Thanks everybody for joining us for this town hall on the Chandra Distributed Peer Review. I'm Rodolfo Montez, I'm the peer review team lead, and I'm presenting this on behalf of the Chandra Director's Office, and I've listed my colleagues here. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the Chandra Peer Review and the changes that are coming for cycle 17. First, I want to start by talking about the traditional Chandra Peer Review that we've done for 26 cycles, 26 years. For 26 years, proposals have been submitted to the Chandra Call for Proposals, and they've been performed via a collection of topical panels. All of these topical panels were held during 1 week, and for 2 decades, we did those peer reviews in person. We had about 10 to 12 panels, at least 2 panels in a given topic so that we can mitigate conflicts of interest. The typical categories of those are listed here. We had a stars panel, which included solar system objects and exoplanets, a broad range of topics, supernovae and neutron stars, binaries and black holes, galaxy clusters, active galactic nuclei, and since cycle 25, we've also introduced the target of opportunity panels, bringing our total up to about 13 panels actually. To do these peer reviews, we needed a total of 90 to 120 reviewers, because we need at least 8 to 12 reviewers per panel, depending on the number of proposals that those topics receive. That's each peer review. The acceptance rates to reviewer invitations are typically well below 50%. Some years they're good, and some years they're very bad. Reviewers are selected based on the expertise needed to review the proposals in a given panel. However, the panels can have a wide variety of topics that can be broader than the interest of an individual reviewer. Each panel reviews 30 to 50 proposals over 2 to 3 full days of panel deliberations, and all the reviewers are expected to read all the proposals in their panel. Reviewers have additional assignments as primary and secondary reviewers for some of the proposals in their panel. Based on all of this, a conservative estimate of the time commitment to participate in the Chandra peer review is about 30 to 40 hours per reviewer. I would say that's a very conservative estimate. The Chandra peer review does not offer an honorarium. It's one of the few NASA-focused peer reviews that does not offer an honorarium. That's not for lack of us trying to get an honorarium. For in-person peer reviews, the CXC did cover expenses for all the reviewers and some staff during the review. This included airfare, hotel, and meals. Since the COVID-19 pandemic, the Chandra peer review has switched to being entirely online. And since then, we've noticed an increase in difficulty in completing these panels. It's not necessarily causal, but we haven't asked the reviewers if that's the reason, but we have noticed it. In addition to that, in the traditional peer reviews, we are missing the majority of Chandra PIs. We did this study around cycle 24. So up to cycle 24, prior to when we introduced the TOO panels, we had about 3,000 unique PIs submitting proposals to the call for proposals up to cycle 24. So that includes all of the cycles prior. And we had about 1,200 unique reviewers participate in the peer review. Of those 1,200, about 200 were never a PI on a Chandra proposal, but just pulled from the general astrophysical community. So we had 950 PIs that have participated as a reviewer at least one time. But if you look at these numbers, you can tell right away that some people are participating multiple times. We're really grateful for their service to the Chandra peer review. But overall, this means that more than 2/3 of Chandra PIs had not participated in a review. So it's about 2,000 PIs that have never participated in the Chandra peer review process. And I don't think this is a controversial statement, but I do believe that Chandra PIs are usually the most qualified to review other Chandra proposals, yet we do not benefit from their expertise as much as we could. So that got us looking down the path of a distributed peer review. In a distributed peer review, the proposals are reviewed by proposers. So if you propose, you have to review some proposals. Other programs that are using a distributed peer review include ALMA, the European Southern Observatory, and the Gemini Fast Turnaround proposals. Many of these programs have performed comprehensive assessments and published articles about their procedures and outcomes, and I give one example here. They were also featured at a peer review under review conference that was held about 2 or 3 years ago. For those facing a distributed peer review for the first time, you might have some questions, and I've listed some of those here. Do I need to reassess how to write my proposals? How will I find the time to review that many proposals? If I'm submitting 5 proposals, will I have to review way more proposals than others? Will my proposal be reviewed fairly? If only PhD scientists can review proposals, will I be able to PI a proposal if I don't have a PI? These are questions that might be circulating in your mind. So we're going to address those questions directly, but first I want to introduce the Chandra Distributed Peer Review, tell you a little bit more about what we're doing and how it's going to operate just for your benefit. So details for the distributed peer review were initially provided in the Cycle 27 call for proposals. You'll find these primarily in section 9.1. We also featured it in the What's New section for Cycle 27. Important elements of Chandra's approach include the designated reviewer role, which we'll talk about more in a moment, and finally the Chandra Distributed Peer Review site, which we'll also talk about. So the designated reviewer is a designated team member who will be responsible for performing 10 to 16 proposal reviews. There are some requirements for the designated reviewer. They must hold a PhD or equivalent doctoral degree in astronomy and or astrophysics. They must have an active CXC user account, and they must allow their user account to be searchable on CPS. This is important for the PI of the proposal to be able to identify that designated reviewer and select them in the CPS form when they're submitting their proposals. Each proposing team must identify the designated reviewer, and that designated reviewer will solely be responsible for participating in the distributed review. Our initial assumption is that the PI serves this role, but the PI can identify another member if they are not going to serve as a designated reviewer. If the PI, this is also, there is one exception here, which is that if you are submitting a proposal and you do not have a PhD yet, you can designate a PhD holding member of your team to be the designated reviewer, and you can perform that review with them if desired. But ultimately, the designated reviewer is responsible for the review. So a designated reviewer will review 10 to 16 proposals. This is the review-wide total for each unique designated reviewer. So if an individual is identified in multiple proposals as the designated reviewer, they won't have to review 20 to 32 proposals. It's just going to be 10 to 16. For that reason, we strongly recommend that an individual not be identified as a designated reviewer in more than 3 proposals. Additionally, we strongly recommend that the designated reviewer be an expert in the topic of the submitted proposal, and we will reserve the right to request a new designated reviewer if we find a reviewer is oversubscribed or doesn't meet these criteria. So now I'm going to switch and talk a little bit about the Chandra Distributed Review site. This is a new tool for reviewers. It's called the Chandra Distributed Review site. CDRS is what we've been calling it in-house. It's a new portal. It's accessed through your CXC user account, the same account that you use for CPS. This portal will be used by each designated reviewer to access their proposals and to perform their 10 to 16 reviews. More information is going to be communicated to the designated reviewers via email, and in addition to a pre-recorded plenary and information that you'll find on the CDRS site once it goes live. The review will go through the following phases, and I'll give you a timeline on the next slide. The assignments phase, this is when we initially make the assignments, and it's a time for you to report any potential conflicts that you may find. We'll do a lot of conflict checking ourselves, the traditional conflict checks that we typically use, but you'll have an opportunity to report any that you find when you get your assignment of proposals. Round one is the first evaluation of the proposal. This is the preliminary numerical evaluation, along with a brief description of the strengths and or weaknesses that motivate the evaluation. There are character limits on these. We don't want them to be overly long. We don't need a preliminary overview of the proposal. We just need you to focus on the strengths or weaknesses that motivate your evaluation. There's a second round. It's reevaluation. It's an opportunity to compare the evaluation to others. We'll anonymize the reviews that others have sent for that given proposal, and you can reassess your grade based on what the others have provided and the text that they provided. If you feel that you've missed something or you found something new, this is a good opportunity for you to adjust your evaluation. The distributed peer review timeline, this is the expected timeline. These are nominal dates. The exact dates will be communicated to designated reviewers once we compile that list of reviewers. So from now until the March 19th deadline, PIs are identifying designated reviewers in their proposals or serving as designated reviewer themselves. About March 31st, about a week after the deadline, we'll share those assignments with the designated reviewers. And then you'll have about 4 weeks of review time to review those 10 to 16 proposals. And that's when your first round of evaluations are due. Shortly after that, we'll turn over and open up the proposals back to the designated reviewers, along with all the evaluations from the other reviewers, and you'll have a chance then to reassess your evaluation. And so about a week after that, you'll be able to submit your final evaluation of that proposal. Once we received all of your evaluations, the peer review process will continue. You'll have done your part at that point, but we'll use those evaluations to start determining the next phase of the review process. This includes a target of opportunity proposals, which will then go from the DPR into the TOO, dedicated TOO panels that will be informed by your evaluations. The large and very large proposals will advance to a big project panel that's further informed by your evaluations. And then those selections, the selections for non-TOO and non-LP or VLP proposals will be based entirely on your evaluations. So now I want to come back to the questions that I pose as potentially frequently asked questions or things running through your mind. The first one here is, do I need to reassess how I write my proposals? The short answer is no. The long answer is that you already probably should have been writing your proposals for a general astrophysical community or non-experts. Since cycle 11, the CFP has stated the following. The reviewers will not necessarily be specialists in your particular science area, so include all relevant information in your proposal. This may be more important in a distributed peer review, but most reviewers will still have some expertise in the topic of the given proposal. Next question is, how will I find the time to review 40 to 60 proposals? 40 to 60 proposals is typically what we would give to a panel to review. But the Chandra distributed peer review is, you're not going to read 40 to 60 proposals. We've designed the peer review so that it's not punitive, nor will it be taxing on the reviewers. So a designated reviewer will only have to review a maximum of 16 proposals. If I'm submitting 5 proposals, will I have to review more proposals than the others? Again, since cycle 10, we found that only a few examples of PIs have submitted up to 5 proposals to 1 CFP. So if you are one of those few, we do have you in mind when we put these caps on the number of proposals that you'll review. But I do want to give the caveat that if a designated reviewer is oversubscribed, so if they're identified on more than 3 proposals, we may request that you identify another designated reviewer in one of your proposals so that we can distribute the reviews across more fairly. I thought only, or if I don't have a PhD, can I still submit a proposal? We put a lot of effort into developing the software to optimize this. Actually, I think I have the wrong question here. I apologize for that. This question actually should be, will my proposals be reviewed fairly? So we put a lot of effort into developing software that optimizes the reviewer expertise with the proposal topics. And by employing this two-stage evaluation process, it offers a pseudo discussion element that allows a reviewer to adjust their review. And we think those two components will help make sure that your review is performed fairly. If only a PhD scientist can review proposals, will I be able to PI a proposal if I don't have a PhD? The answer is yes. Non-PhDs can still PI proposals, but a PhD holding team member must be selected as a designated reviewer. The designated reviewer can work with the non-PhD holding PI on the review process, but the designated reviewer is solely responsible for the review. I want to thank you for your attention.